Yeah, well, I'm a singer-songwriter, an artist that's been, and vocalist that's been active for the past 2 decades or something. I'm based in Copenhagen, Denmark, and basically always been writing and documenting my, let's call it existence, through songs. And also, videos, visuals that comes with that. Yeah, I'm really, it's been a passion of mine, and always, that's been, yeah, that's the drive, as long as the engine is there and the synergy and blessings of, I feel like there's a purpose behind it. So, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're being very modest and humble, but it's worth saying that you were in the band Outlandish.
Oh yeah. So part of that journey was being part of the trio, Copenhagen-based group called Outlandish, and we had 20 years together, just creating 5 albums, and yeah, beautiful time, some beautiful songs, and and that's how I got in touch with a lot of people in the UK. Some of the first people who showed us love was definitely here in UK. So it's always special to be back in London and connect with people.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're a little bit of a sort of a childhood role model of mine, because when I was a kid, me and my brother, we were obsessed with your music, and even to this day,
wow,
it's some of the only music we have on like our old MP3
I'm honored.
players. So it was something unique and original,
wow,
and it sort of captured. I think that's what was part of the success. Actually, it was a very unique flavour. It was something that we never heard of before. And I think in the group it was yourself and you're of Moroccan origin.
Yeah.
You had
Waqas, who was Pakistani,
and then
Lenny was Cuban.
Cuban, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you had like Spanish, English, Danish,
Yeah.
and Urdu as well in some of them.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So I mean, we always felt like the more, local and true to ourselves we were in the music, the more international, and the bigger a chance to get a breakthrough, because you would sound, like you said, you would have your own sound, so we would definitely sample from our respective cultural backgrounds, use the music from Arabic music, Asian, Indian or Pakistani music, or Latin, the different genres of the Latin music. So a lot of inspiration there, and because we wanted to, we were huge. I mean, inspiration came from the African American hip hop scene, both East Coast, West Coast.
This was in Denmark, where you guys were growing up.
Yeah. So we would listen to a lot of the things that was going on the American, what was going on in America. Very inspired by, the minorities over there, and how they've the output that they've given the world. The way they talk about some of the same issues that we go through. But it was different. Societies are different from overseas. But then we would look towards France as well. You have the French hip hop scene. It's big, and some of the a lot of rappers with North African roots, and the way they would shoot their videos, and the way they would use the French language would definitely be, would inspire a lot, even though I don't understand French, but, I could connect. And same thing with overseas, with the African Americans, because they got their own, they create their own language. And to understand, the poetic, how do you say, the poetic language, that would be hard for us to understand that. But you get, we see the videos and you get the main theme that is going on. So music became, there was the friendship of Outlandish, and then there was the music, and it was, that was, I always say, like, as a teenager, you spend a lot of time doing something. I don't know what you did when you were a teenager, but what we did was music. That became like the force. And friendship.
I don't think I did much as a teenager.
but French, obviously, friendship means a lot as a teenager. That's when friends actually, just really, like, it's all about friends.
And you three kind of came together.
Yeah, we came together. We were a bigger group, but it ended up being us three, and a lot of our, after school we would hang out, and either, there was a period where we would break dance. I'm not a good dancer at all, but again, the friends were break dancing, so we were break dancing, and then it went into the writing and the rhyming, and from there just evolving and basically finding your own style, so, but always very, very much inspired by so many talented artists that are out there.
That's fantastic. Well, that's a great introduction to you, I think, and just on the point you just mentioned, the idea of finding an identity through music, or that becoming your identity.
Okay.
And so I wonder, like, what your thoughts are on space being a form of identity, and if there's ever been moments in your life where maybe it's your home in Denmark, maybe it's when you've been to Morocco to see family or whatever.
Yeah.
Is there a moment where you feel a close affinity to a particular space, and what are the reasons for that? What are some of the reasons for that, in your opinion?
Well, I think as human beings we are, always getting different expressions from our environment. We always, it feeds us. So if it's a concrete jungle, then that's how your sound is gonna look like and sound. And when I met, when we established Outlandish, that was surrounded by the concrete jungle. And so that's part of, and that's always, I think it's almost like it's just become a part of hip hop as well, part of that sound.
And you think that's actually influenced the sound?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. I think because it's a cold. How do you say?
Experience. You talking about so you're saying
the concrete, basically
the experience of the concrete, the experience of being in that kind of urbanity.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. That flavor has been brought into actual sound, music.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think more than you actually realize. I think if we grew up in, in the woods or in somewhere green, it would have a different sound.
Country music.
Probably, yeah, yeah. So or in the desert, whatever, So, and I also think, that's why. Speaking of architects, we were inspired by different communities around the world who had the same architect, who were, brought up, grown up, and made music in the same kind of environment, it would be, concrete jungles. And that had a huge impact on us because we could relate. Because it's a certain type of people that live there. It's not, obviously it's not the elite.
Is it that this concrete jungle influences or creates a certain culture or of those people who experience it, and then that is almost somehow translated into music? Or is it that concrete jungle breeds a sort of type of music which then it feeds culture? Or is it kind of a bit of both?
Well, that's a good question. Probably a bit of both.
I mean, it's maybe... Sorry, go.
No, yeah. I mean, my parents moved to this place, the concrete jungle, and I would say, I mean, we were a working class family.
And they came from Morocco.
They came from Morocco, yeah. But the reason why they moved to this part of suburbs, Copenhagen, was because of more room. You needed more space. The family was growing. I have we have 4 siblings, but my parents has always been there for me. They always had a father figure, and mother was house mom, just taking care of my first school. So they were, I mean...
So it was a somewhat of a stable, would you say it was a stable?
Yeah, definitely a stable. I wouldn't say like, when I think back, I mean, and this is where I can relate to the architects and the environment of what was going on in US, but some of the stories would, I mean, the crime scenes and some of the social structures would be different, and I feel that was important to write about, and just so because no one would believe you if you talking about the same things that they're talking about in the same way that they do. So we needed to again keep it local and keep it personal, and also just be yourself and be proud of that, and show that and talk about it. And we were, as it's not like you don't have to pretend that you came from poverty, because we were not poor. Like I said, it was working class, but it was, alhamdulillah, I mean, I wasn't missing anything,
That's amazing.
Yeah, so...
What were the sort of circles you were in, social circles? Was it mainly people who came from similar backgrounds, let's say parents who'd come to the country, and they were first generation or second generation? Yeah. Was it that sort of a deal, and is that why you felt comfortable or proud in your identity almost?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the crowd and the friends, because all of us in the group had different ethnic backgrounds, and also were hanging out with friends with the same story. But we were, in Denmark, we were in Copenhagen, and we were in high school as well, so and had parents who emphasized the importance of education, and so as long as we were in school doing our school things, they were okay with having a hobby, trying to, or the friendship, you know. So the parents knew each other, we knew of each other's friends, and
I remember, and you said to earlier when we were talking that they weren't that they didn't really music was, or the arts was a bit alien to them.
Yeah.
So what was that kind of attitude when you guys after school were kind of doing your thing? Were they just sort of, you know?
It was just a hobby. That's what it is. It was just a hobby. They treated it that way. So that was just something that, you know, as long as you've done your homework, whatever you do after that, that's, you know, that's okay. As long as you're not breaking into things or, you know, something criminal or, you know.
And did you ever get a sense that it would end up becoming what it was, or like did you have another band or an artist that you were thinking we're trying to become as big as them or emulate them, or did it just take off and was it a surprise to you guys?
I think we always had the ambition. We always had the ambition of we wanted to, you know, share this dream with the world, and, you know, share this music with the world. So.
So you knew you had something unique.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we knew we had something unique, but we definitely had the ambition and the vision to reach out to the world. I mean, it wasn't just a local thing, and that's why we also, you know, the language was it was either English or, you know, Urdu or Spanish. So the language was also international, you know. But again, I mean, very much inspired by groups like the Fugees. I think Fugees, it was even before they had their success, but just seeing them doing their thing with live instruments, and also they have started the whole refugee thing, talking about being from Haiti and and rapping in that language as well, you know. And I mean, and getting these influences from, you know, the French hip hop scene, and seeing some of their videos as well. So there was some dots that connected, and we were like, we could be part of that narrative. So loads of inspiration came from that. Yeah.
And how much was it, like, in your mind that the music that you guys were creating, this kind of culture, let's say, because music is essentially a defining part of a culture, you know, it's a key element in a culture. So this kind of little cultural music that you were making and were eventually getting a following, was it ever in your mind that relationship with artist and audience, you know, and what message you wanted to give, what you wanted them to sort of feel almost, and or how you wanted them to see you?
Yeah, I think you know, to begin with, it's all about finding your own path, you know, as an artist, and as a songwriter as well, you know, just being able to express and share your narrative of your life with the world, and trying to differentiate from, you know, those who inspired you and those who, you know, at a certain point you need to take your own, you know, you need to find your own way and go your own way, you know. And so when we created the whole sound of Outlandish, yeah, I remember like one of the places where we got a lot of love and a lot of feedback was from UK, and partially because of the minorities over here, you know, the Asian minority. I remember BBC Asia would be, you had that, right? BBC Asia,
BBC Asia.
yeah. So and the tracks that would they were into were not the tracks that, you know, the radio tracks, but it was the tracks that had, you know, maybe some Asian samples. We would sample something from some Bollywood movie, or so that was very interesting. I mean, and
the interest from the UK. That
yeah, because they would dig in obviously their roots.
And what time period are we talking now? We're talking early 2000s.
This is early 2000s, yeah. This is 2003, really.
Because that was around the time that me and my brother, we got really, really into Outlandish. I think from my point of view, maybe one reason why, and maybe you already have reasons why you guys were such a hit over here. But I think that from my point of view, it was very, in some ways, that post 9/11 era was quite difficult to grow up as a young Muslim in the UK. And I mean, not that difficult, but it could have been worse, obviously, and so for some people it is. But you felt like a disconnect with your identity, and you almost felt ashamed of your identity, and you wanted
post 9/11,
and you wanted to feel as close to the majority as possible, to the mainstream, and not be you felt like you were being a nuisance almost if you were, you know, to express your true identity. So when I saw you guys, a band that, and to be honest, I didn't know you guys were Danish to begin with. It didn't really matter.
No.
But what you guys were sort of, you know, two of you were Muslim, one was Christian.
Yeah. And
you were together, and you were making something that was so unique, and you weren't ashamed of who you were.
Yeah.
And maybe this was never a dilemma for you guys, because as you said, you grew up already quite proud of the fact that, or, you know, content in the fact that this is my identity.
Yeah.
But I think that meant a lot for me, and maybe others had the same experience, that, you know, it meant a lot that there was this trio, and they were really proud of who they were, and they were singing about it, and they were making music about it.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's what represents artists. I mean, artists, they portray their lives. You know, if you make, I wouldn't say meaningless pop music, but just, you know, songs for the radio, then that represents who you are, you know.
And you never wanted to go down that avenue?
No, we didn't have a problem with radios. We wanted to be on the radio, but we just wanted to be on the radio, you know, from our point of view. You know, I can't make songs about, you know, I mean, it was, you know, making club songs, like,
it wouldn't have been true to you guys.
It wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't be. We just don't have that. How do you say? Early on, I think we just realized, like, that's not our force. I mean, that's not why we're doing this. So why are we doing this? And it was the, you know, like a diary. You know, just opening that book and just writing about your life. You know, and that was the first breakthrough we had actually in Denmark, called the song called Welu.
Welu.
Yeah, Welu, which means nothing in Moroccan Arabic. Yeah.
So you're saying the songs themselves were almost like a diary?
Yeah. And that song just has different scenes from our lives, just being the teenager, just trying to find your way. And we're talking about that, and we're talking about how the importance of coming together and, you know, supporting each other. And
that's another. Sorry, go on.
That was you know, that was a breakthrough, a huge breakthrough for us. Not only just, you know, as career-wise, but also just personally and as human beings and as artists. You know, because we proved to the industry that, well, you can be successful just doing, you know, being true to yourself, doing your own thing, and not not trying to fit in and just sound like whatever else is going on out there, you know. And that was that became, I mean, that showed us the way, you know. So it was.
What was the next one after that?
The next one after that was well,
Aisha?
No, because Welu was from the first album. The first album was called Outlandish Official. The second album was Bread and Bottles of Water, and that's when Aisha was there.
Mm-hmm.
But so the first album didn't ever make it to the internationals. It didn't. But
was it domestically?
It was the second one. The second one came through with Aisha, and
which was obviously, that was an immense hit. That was crazy. That one.
Yeah. Do you remember some of the songs from that album?
I know the songs, but I don't know which album they're from.
Okay.
So I don't know. Was
Calling You was from the third album.
The third album.
Yeah, it's called Closer Than Veins.
In Good Time. Oh, In Good Hands. Sorry.
In Good Hands.
In Good Hands.
That's also from Closer Than Veins. So on Bread and Bottles of Water, we put Welu in there as well, but you also had
Sakina. Was that on?
Sakina was also. I think you came on probably on the Closer Than Veins. Closer Than Veins was 2005. 2005.
Okay.
2002, we had Bread and Bottles of Water. In 2000, we had Outlandish Official. But yeah, man. I mean, we so many songs, so many stories, so many anecdotes, and we got to, you know, getting invitations from pretty much all over the world and playing your music. So that's been a huge blessing, and you learned a lot of things, you know. And I think with Bread and Bottles of Water, we were supposed to. We got signed to an American company as well, record company, and I think 3 months later, after we signed it, it went bankruptcy. So that didn't happen, you know. But until then, it was like, just, you got to spend the next year just traveling U.S. and doing promotion over there. So that changed the game a little bit, but we were still traveling in Europe and Asia and Middle East. And
do you get recognized now? Like, since you've been in the UK the last few days?
Sometimes.
Have you had people come up to you, really?
Right now we're doing this event, annual event in London called GPU, and sometimes some people come up to me and they're like, hey, you know, I used to listen to your songs, and now my kids are listening to your songs, and it's.
How does that feel? What does that feel like?
Alhamdulillah, I think, you know, it's I think it's a beautiful thing when you just, you know, there's so many songs out there. So when you become part of people's soundtracks, you know, life soundtracks, that's an honor, you know. And music is feelings, you know. And it tells a story about, again, architecture as well, the environment that you grew up in, or but it also tells you about, you know, what's your purpose? What's your purpose in life? You know, I'd say for me, I always had this conscious, always been very drawn by the especially the songs that have, you know, the topic of consciousness, talking about, you have some different rappers out there, they who address that topic, and I've always been drawn to that. So the whole element of also representing your deen and the religious side of your life, you know, that's been very important. I mean, because it's part of who you are. So to find room for that in the music as well, and also in the videos, you know, because we were not only concrete. Our narrative is not just about the concrete jungle. There's more to it. So when we invite people inside, you know, and I always say, like, songs are like windows, you know, they're windows to your building, you know, especially a hit song. A hit song can be a door or a window, you know, because you invite people in and they can get a taste of what it means to be you. And then you got, you know, album tracks. They're like the bricks, you know. So it's a huge blessing, and you know, to have some of those windows. I mean, building it without windows, what is that? You know, we need windows because that's where the light comes in, and that's where, you know, the openings. And you can't calculate with that. I mean, it just happens, you know. But what you can do is just, you know, yeah. I mean, write if that's what you're into, or, you know, film, or yeah, whatever passion you have, it might evolve into an opening, like a door or a window, you know. And I feel that's what we did. I remember being one of the first groups where in Denmark with ethnic backgrounds, the diversity, and we were young and just, you know, I guess open about the whole thing. Just, hey, but this is my life. This is how I was raised. You know, this is how I grew up. And I remember Bachiri was, yeah, he was married. You know, and it was set up by his parents. So that was an arranged marriage. You know, and just the way we addressed it, talked about it. And the majority in Denmark are white people. They don't do arranged marriage anymore. There's a long time since they've done that, you know. So, but just to connect with people, no matter color and backgrounds and creed, and that's an important part of. That's what music can do. You know, that's one of the powerful tools about music and art. So,
do you think that element of emotion that is communicated through music, and when we look at parallels with space architecture, do you think there's something which can be incredibly moving, spaces that can move us, cultural spaces, or even our own homes? Do you think that there's something in the construction of a piece of music which translates over to the construction of a piece of architecture? For example, with you know, in an urban space, you may have more kind of contracted spaces which have high intensity of activity, or more traffic, and you may have more generous open spaces which allow you to breathe. In music, you have your hook or your chorus or your crescendo, which is that moment of intensity, and then you've got your verses which build up to that. I mean, it's kind of maybe one very one example of maybe where the construction of architecture or urbanism and construction of music, they have a parallel. And do you think that, you said earlier, you know, the music was about feelings or communicating feelings, and do you think with architecture that's a valid parallel, you know, valid comparison, where a piece of architecture actually, if it's constructed, you know, constructed well, it can communicate an emotion or make us feel something?
That's a good question. I think human beings always feel something, you know. No matter the environment. And I think we do need to be close to, you know, something green. And I remember the place where we grew up and we met as a band. We would have some, you know, woods in nearby as well. But it's a good question. I definitely think that it has an impact on us as human beings. I don't think we can be without it. You know, it becomes part of us. Definitely, it becomes part of us. And like I said before, the buildings that surrounds you has an effect on you. You know, a building without windows has an effect on you. You know, a building only with windows has an effect on you. I mean, this is where, I mean, the modern times, where we going, it's like people are just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the glass is glass all over, right? It's, that hasn't, you know, in a time where we're talking social media and everyone wants to be seen, and you know, we never experienced something like this. This is a phenomenon. But again, so the whole social media thing with having these glass buildings, you know, I definitely believe there's a connection.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a humanity kind of, you could say is it a technological or cultural evolution where we're searching for more openness, or we're searching for something?
Yeah, we're searching for...
We're looking for
light, you know, being freedom, looking for love, looking for being seen, validated, or whatever it is
do you think deep down we distract ourselves from that search by busying ourselves with our careers, you know, becoming an architect or whatever it might be, and that becoming our purpose, as opposed to seeking a true purpose, maybe? One that's not self-defined.
Elaborate on that.
I don't think this is going to go in, but this is not the right audience. Well, I was just thinking that...
I just think, like, you know, it's more the...
I know a lot of my friends, they work work a lot.
Yeah.
Right? They stay late at the office.
Yeah.
But and they're non-Muslim, but and they're non-religious. They don't think about it.
Yeah.
But when you ask them why, like, why do you want to stay behind and finish that? Who cares?
Yeah.
You know, who really cares? You could even go as extreme as saying, like, a doctor saving a life. Why does a life matter? It's hard to give something value unless it's something concrete, something objective, saying that this has value. You know? For me, that means a lot. Like, when I was a kid, by the way, I used to think, I don't want to work my whole life. Who wants to work their whole life? But when you realize that it's a means to an end, it's to take care of a family, and family is important. You know, Allah says you should take care of your family, and you should be a provider and all these sorts of things. You should protect your family. Then it gives it meaning, and you're doing it for Allah. You're doing it for a bigger thing. Yeah. And I think that avoids a lot of arguments and things, because I think as men, I think women too, but as men we maybe tend to get angered quicker about things, right? And I've noticed it in me, and I'm, you know, where a relative might do something, and you just think, you know, but when you pause for a second, you think, wait a minute, the Prophet said, you know, this is not a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it pleases Allah to not, you know, adhere to your instinct of just getting angry at something. Then you almost take a step back and calm down, and it just has this amazing controlling effect. You know, creates peace, not just in the family, but when you create peace in the family, it creates peace on a street level, on a city level.
Yeah, I think that's again. I mean, that's also why it was always important to have that element in music. You know, because it was a clear element in my life. You know, it's a clear element of, I mean, the whole religious upbringing. To let that have a room in the whole composition and the whole in the narrative, and just be true to that, and that's important, and I feel so next to the concrete. Well, in the basement you'd have the mosque. So to, you know, to have that in the music, I mean, it tells you about, even though you have these cold buildings, this is how we kept ourselves warm. You know, this is how we kept ourselves alive. Or
your religion.
Yeah, the importance of religion, the importance of light, the importance of love, the importance of because you would also have, you know, the sad cases, you know, where, you know, who drank their life away, or, you know, lived there because they're poor, and just, you know, different destinies who'd lived side by side next to each other, but with different approach to life, I guess, or a different view on purpose and meaning of life. You know, I always found that interesting because a lot of the mosques, a lot of the where I was raised, are outside of, you know, not in the center, but in the suburbs, and I was thinking, why is that? You know, and
why are there so many different types of
destinies
or lives?
Yeah, no, but more like, you know, why these prayer rooms and mosque were located more in the outline.
Periphery.
Yeah, in the periphery. Yeah, exactly, and not in the center.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is interesting because in the center everyone sees you there. You know, in the periphery, that's where you can
hide
retreat.
Away. Yeah. And what lies at the center, would you say, in today's world, in England, in Denmark?
Well, to be in the center, you got to be accepted. You got to be part of normal. You know.
And how would you say that translates to physical space? Physical space? Yeah. Would you say, when you say normal, do you mean secular?
Mainstream?
Yes. But do you also mean secular? Inherently, or implied in that, do you mean secular as well, as in non-religious?
I think that's definitely, I mean, in the West where we are from, that is probably the meaning, yeah. I mean, we live in secular societies, you know. So I find it very interesting that, again, that's where my parents and their generation, they would build these mosques and prayer rooms, but it would be in the periphery.
It would be like a room in a house or something.
Yeah.
They'd renovate a floor and make it a mosque.
Yeah. And you only know it if you're one of them who's visiting these rooms, or if someone told you. But you can have neighbors who's been there for 40 years. They don't have a clue.
Wow.
You know.
So it's almost like the hidden world.
I think it's also a protection, you know, because there's a reason why you couldn't be in the center. So you build it over there just because that's where you found peace, you know, and that's where you found like you could.
So away from the noise.
Yeah, away from the noise, the retreat, and be yourself, you know, and be yourself without being criticized, you know.
And is that where you found yourself, maybe your friends, like growing up? Is that where you would spend a lot of time? Was it more on the periphery?
We were born here, you know. So for us, this was just the pitch. This was just part of our narrative, you know, the bigger picture, you know. And we knew about the center and we knew about the periphery. So for us, it was really, you know, when it came to writing songs, it was important to, how do you say, embrace it and just be, you know, open about it and not be intimidated by, you know, either people who would be secular and don't like to talk religion, or whatever problem that might, you know, you can't have everyone. Not everyone can love you, you know. With that is. But just to be, outspoken about it and represent it, because I think that's what you're talking about, that transcended to you as a teenage Muslim or kid, British kid, Muslim kid here in Britain, listening to our music, you know. For us, this was, I mean, when I would listen to the artists that I was, you know, like I said, we had Outkast. We also had like some of the gangster rap from NWA to Snoop to who else was there? Ice Cube. You know, it's just the way the music sounded and the way they, you know, the lyrics and.
It's almost music from the periphery, you could say, from that culture.
Yeah, from that culture, exactly, from that culture, and they would be true to themselves in that sense, you know. And the same thing for the French rappers, you know. You had a Super Saiyan crew. You had a lot of different rappers. But what I mean, for me, it was like, even though I didn't understand French, but I always mentioned this story that I saw from one of the videos, a French rap group, where the mother was baking bread in the kitchen and he was standing next to her just performing his rap to the camera, you know. And that's a scene from my life, you know. That's how I was brought up. My mother was always, you know, would always bake bread, you know. And I was like, how? I mean, just to have the nerves and the courage to do that, you know. Because I can relate completely when you say that you used to say, you know, in school you didn't like that people knew you were Muslim.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was. But this was when I was much younger. But it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
weird. It was a weird thing where I was like trying to distance.
Yeah,
myself a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit,
yeah. And this is post 9/11 as well. So
Mm.
you know, the whole demonization and the dehumanization, and it just came through. It came through the mainstream. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, there were a lot of racists or anything like that, but it just, this was from on a government level, you know. So again, it's going to be, it's not to be political or anything, but what happened in Iraq and what happened in Afghanistan, and the way that we demonized those people, and we look like those people, you know. That happens on a media level, on a government level. So it was really important for us to show the beauty of what was given to us by our parents, you know, in the environment. You know, it was this concrete jungle. It was that was the frame, you know. But talking about it in a way and presenting it in a beautiful way, poetic and musically, you know. So I'm glad when you know that it shined through and you connected.
Mm. Definitely. Going back to what we were talking, you were.
And I'd say
No.
still to this day, that fight is still going on. I mean, that struggle is still going on because of I think we're getting better. We're evolving as a society and as a people, and as you know, Westerners is changing as everything is, you know. But we you know, we have a responsibility to speak up and use our talents to not just bring people together, but change the narrative. You know, if we don't speak up in whatever field you might be in, we're not going to change anything. You know.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, this conversation actually, that you mentioned we were talking about the periphery and the center, the middle, and the mainstream. And do you think, thinking about it from a spatial point of view, do you think that those icons, that there are icons of secularism, if you want to call it that, or like of the mainstream? And maybe, if we use London as an example, at the heart of London, you've got a lot of offices, you've got banks, you've got shopping malls, and do you think maybe this is not a thing, but do you think that in the past, where in England it would have been cathedrals, churches would have been the heart of any settlement, any village, town, city?
Yeah.
At the heart would have been a church or a cathedral.
Yeah. It was like that.
But now that the churches and cathedrals have kind of been moved to the side for these huge, like you said, concrete
malls
jungle. Yes, like these landmarks of, you could say, these icons of secularism, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you think that is like a physical manifestation of this middle ground, of this mainstream, and the physical manifestation of the periphery is the mosques in the houses, or it's still, you know, the churches that exist in England today? Do you see it in that kind of way, like those two cultures almost?
I think there's a connection, you know, because whatever's in the center, I don't know if you can say this, but whatever's in the center is something that is relevant to people, you know, something that means something to people. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the center. You usually have like a square, you know, where people can meet and celebrate, or But now so you do have that, you still have that, but you also have like, malls and stuff, because it has a relevance it brings relevance to people, That's where people meet. But it's very interesting. I've never really thought too much about it, but it used to be churches, like
Yes.
when people here were more religious,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not the case anymore. I think the mosques, the mosque are always, there's always people in the mosque, especially on a Friday. You can't find a place to park your car on a Friday for Jumu'ah, right? But societies change, and people change, and some are scared of that change. We saw the riots, that's been going on here. I think it's not just here, it's probably all over Europe. What do you think of that change that's going on? How does that what does that tell you?
Which change do you mean?
I mean, like, on a political level, like we see right now with, or we saw with the riots,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's something that I see going on in the West. Is it fear-based? Is it?
I think so. I told you earlier about this bit of film that I made for the World Wars and Muslim Memorial Trust.
Yeah.
And the point of that film was to tell a story, and the story was that Muslims are part of the fabric of Britain.
Yeah.
They fought for us.
Yeah.
They fought for our values.
Yeah.
These are stories. These are narratives that have, whether consciously or subconsciously, just been forgotten.
Yeah.
1944, 1943.
Yeah.
Monte Cassino, the battle for Italy. Was full of Punjabi brigades and soldiers from the Punjab who were Muslim, majority Muslim.
Yeah.
Hitler called it Europe's soft underbelly. Hitler's soft underbelly.
Mm.
Muslims fought to liberate Italy.
Yeah.
And liberate Europe, liberate Britain. So these stories have been forgotten. So I think what's so interesting in the work I do and the work you've done is that we're trying to communicate narratives. We're just trying to tell stories, we're trying to communicate those narratives, and we're trying to do them in the best way we can. And you're doing it through music, I'm doing it through film.
Yeah.
But the heart of what we're doing is story, is narrative.
Yeah.
The expression is different, but the heart of it is the same. And I think you said earlier, whatever field you're in, it's important to try and communicate the truth, trying to communicate these stories, but also even within architecture, when I'm producing work for a practice, the heart of a good piece of film, whatever the subject is the story.
The story, yeah.
It's not the slick production, and and this has been done many times. There's many people who are very good at it, but there's not many people that are good at telling stories, and that is, I think, the unique value that from the work that you do, and I hope and I think the work that I do, that's the unique thing I'm adding to the world and to the conversation, to culture.
It's important, and I think when you're talking about a memorial is not in the periphery. That needs to be in the center. The story you're telling right now very few people know about it, because someone is not interested in highlighting that narrative, that part of the, this country's history, because it goes against the mainstream narrative.
Yeah, and I think British people are when very willing to hear this stuff. And when they do, it brings us as a country together.
Yeah.
And we become friends, and we realise, wait a minute, because I remember growing up, and I remember in my class, kids, the kids were like, oh, my grandma, operated an anti-aircraft battery in the Second World War. My granddad fought here. Everyone's grandparents had done something.
Yeah.
And again, it was that feeling of, I'm just going to stay quiet because, my grandparents weren't from here. They can't have possibly done anything.
Yeah.
Yet, when we did this film, when we did the research for the film, so many people didn't realise that their Muslim granddad from India, Pakistan, wherever. If you were in France, it would have been the North African Muslims who fought for the liberation of Europe. And when we know these stories, I think if I'd known that story when I was that boy, little boy in that class, I would have been a bit more confident. I would have been like, my ancestors have something to add as well, and they did add something to this country.
Yeah, I mean,
and I wonder if that's unique to the British context, or if it translates over to Denmark.
I think it translates over to the whole Europe, because obviously Britain has the whole colonialism, that just adds to the history you're telling, because where did they come from? They came from Punjab, they came from India, and just that whole history of what Britain did in India just adds to it. And I think there's a lot of what do you say? Like, there's something that's hard to swallow. The truth of what really happened, and that's why you're in the periphery. So we have to learn to talk about it, and one way of learning to talk about it is doing memorials, remembering people's history, people's narratives.
Remembrance.
Another one's another one is making songs, because songs humanizes, or making movies. Hollywood has always demonized Muslims, so that's why we're in the periphery. It makes sense. I mean, I understand why my parents they'd rather be in the periphery than be in the center. But because we're born here, we don't see a problem standing in the center. And when we stand in the center, we're listening to these people who are criticizing us for our beliefs, or are you taking over, or,
Do you think that fed into your music, this bringing the two worlds together almost?
I think it's all about my music. When you listen to it, because my music is created here in the West. It's about the West, But I was just, I think, very, I wanted to have, be very holistic and very true to my story, and also not just, make pop songs for the mainstream, but also have that element of, singing in your mother tongue, or and representing the values that you've been given. It's been part of your upbringing. That's been also just the spiritual part of it. And not to distance yourself from it because you went top 10, So I think with, yeah, the whole thing with architects, the periphery, the center, the doors, the windows. All this is part of, you know, the narrative of a society, and the art of, reaching out to people. That's what song does. I mean, because people, the beautiful thing about songs is people, again, relevance. You know, if a song means something to someone, he'll take it or she will take it with her home. Suddenly you're part of the family, you know, in a weird way, you know, and it becomes personal, you know, because songs are often you know, it describes a moment in your life, you know. So for some people it was, you know, they would have a song, one of our songs that represents a time when they lost someone, you know. And if I meet that person in the supermarket, and I've tried this before, they would just start crying, you know. And they're talking to you as if they, you know, as if you're a brother or a sister, you know, a sister, you know. So it's very emotional and weird at the same time, you know. So yeah, it's a powerful tool, and I also think, you know, when things are happening in the world, like tragedy or earthquake or whatever, my experience is like, you know, when you sing about things that are real to you, people listen when people are actually interested in your thoughts when something important happens in life or in the world, you know. So yeah, again, I guess it comes down to relevance, right? What does it mean? I mean, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? So if you give people that, if they can value it, and it's more than just Friday night or I think people are always looking for something that they can use in their life, you know.
You said something quite interesting earlier. You said, you know, being part of the soundtrack of someone's life.
Yeah.
And do you think, if we look at sort of, you know, there's sort of, let's say, music can add to the rhythm, has a rhythm, and it adds to the rhythm of life in a way, depending on what you listen to, and it can affect how you perceive things. You get musical rhythm, but then do you think in the same way with architecture, the way that the corner of a wall might be designed, making you have to walk a certain path around it, or in an urban setting, the way that a path is laid out, you know, almost controlling how you move through a space, and defining a rhythm for that space, defining a rhythm for a home. Do you think in the same way? Do you see that as being another comparison with music, where, you know, music is all about rhythm? It's built on rhythm. Do you think architecture is almost like a rhythm for one's life in a way?
Wow. Good question. Yeah, I think architecture is it plays an important role, definitely, and it has an impact on your life, and the way we see things. So, like I said before, this is extreme, but, you know, the thing with the glass buildings, you know, and how it defines us in a way. It tells something about the way we live our lives today. And if I compare that with, I remember I was in Damascus in Syria a long time ago, when Syria was still, and there was peace, and there's this building, a lot of the buildings over there they have these, they have this very humble look from the outside. But when you enter the building, it just opens up, and it's almost like, a castle. And that's to protect you against the eye of, let's just say, jealousy, or so there's certain things that mean something to people. And, culture varies, and different way of outlook on life and what matters. Again, relevance in fashion and trends. You can go to Dubai and you can see all these, it's very different type buildings, and people are very creative. And they definitely tell a story of who we are as human beings on this planet, and the way we treat the climate, the way we treat Earth, and I think it's archaeology and anthropologists that hundreds of years later, they will get knowledge of who we were as people, from the buildings that we built. So yeah, I definitely believe that buildings have a huge impact, and tells a story of who we are and how we live our lives, and what, lifestyle, and what we held high, and what meant something for us,
That's beautiful.
Yeah. SubhanAllah.
So that's amazing. And just to bring it to a close, because that's been an amazing conversation. Could we summarize?
Pleasure's mine.
Oh yes,
mine,
no,
man.
of course.
Yeah.
Could we summarize by saying that music and architecture really is almost about memory? You said earlier we were talking about the memorial and remembrance.
Yeah.
But this story you mentioned of Syria and the buildings, and this is what remains of us. And it's the same with music. Music is almost our archaeology. As humans.
Yeah.
Our sound, our culture, our emotion.
It's heritage, it's legacy, I mean, I would be honored if my music is still in people's hearts and conscious in 100 or 200 or 300 years, time flies, right? But that's the test of time, right? I mean, how you will be remembered, and what songs lives on, So
Wonderful.
Just like buildings.
Just like buildings.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's why people are so, amazed about the pyramids. They still stand there. They don't have a window.
No window. Amazing. Isam, it's been really a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And it's been an honor, honestly, having you on. So
thanks for having me.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Amazing. So
hey, alhamdulillah, man.
Perfect timing.
We did it.
You must be hungry as well. So
did you hear my belly at one point?
Yeah. I thought that was me, but no.
Oh my god.
Let me see where. Fantastic. That was amazing.
Alhamdulillah, man.